What if you could turn a total gamble into a predictable science? Well, that is exactly what Claude Hopkins did for advertising way back in 1923 with his book Scientific Advertising. Today, we're going to break down the absolutely timeless principles from this classic that, believe it or not, are still the foundation of marketing. And hey, don't just take my word for it. The legend himself, David Ogilvy, the father of advertising, he flat out said Hopkins changed his life. Now, why would he say that? Because Hopkins taught him a simple but radical truth. The only purpose of an ad is to sell something. That one idea completely rewired the whole industry. All right, let's dive in. See, before Hopkins came along, advertising was kind of a mystery box. You'd throw a bunch of money at it, cross your fingers, and just hope for the best. Hopkins looked at that and thought, this is insane. He was convinced you could turn all that guesswork and waste into a real science, one with fixed principles where every single dollar could be tracked and measured. So how'd he do it? Well, it all kicks off with this one core idea, this single metaphor that's the most important building block of his entire philosophy. You gotta get this to get everything else that follows. Hopkins asked a really simple question. Is your ad an actor or is it a salesman? Think about it. The actor, they're on stage to perform, right? They want applause, they want to be seen as clever. But the salesman, they have one job and one job only, to make the sale. They're not using flowery language, they're using simple, direct, sincere talk because success for them isn't applause, it's cash in the register. And this quote just nails it. Hopkins saw so much money just being thrown away on ads that were, sure, maybe they were entertaining, but they didn't actually sell anything. His logic was simple. If you wouldn't say it to a customer's face to try and get a sale, you have no business putting it in an ad. The ad is the salesman, period. Okay, so if every ad is a salesman, how do you find the best one? Well, you don't guess. You set up a little competition and you let the results pick the winner. This is the science part of scientific advertising. The key to his whole system was traceable results. Hopkins had this light bulb moment with mail order ads because you could track everything. You knew exactly which headline in which newspaper made someone mail in a coupon. And that data was the breakthrough. It meant you could finally stop guessing and start knowing what actually works. He broke the process down into 4 dead simple, learnable steps. 1, create different versions of your ad. Maybe you test 2 different headlines against each other. 2, stick in a trackable offer, like a coupon people have to cut out and mail back. 3, measure the results. How much did it cost you for each reply you got? And 4, the most important step of all, you adopt the winner and you ditch the loser. Simple, logical, and just incredibly powerful. You see, for Hopkins, mail order was the perfect laboratory. There were no fuzzy metrics like brand awareness to hide behind. It was pure cause and effect. You ran an ad and you either got a pile of coupons back or you got nothing. The numbers don't lie. And it was in this tough, unforgiving world that he figured out his laws of advertising. So after testing thousands and thousands of ads, what did he actually learn? Well, he started to see these patterns, these fundamental laws of human psychology that just worked over and over again. Let's look at a couple of the absolute most critical ones. The foundation for all of his tactics is this simple, kind of brutal truth. People are fundamentally selfish. They just are. They don't care about your company, they don't care about your profits, they care about themselves. And so every single effective ad has to answer the customer's unspoken question, what's in it for me? So his first tactic was to frame your ad not as a demand to buy something, but as an offer of service. Instead of just screaming, buy my soap, you offer helpful cleaning tips. You give them a free sample. You take away all the risk. You shift the entire focus from your needs to theirs, and you make them feel like you're genuinely there to help them solve a problem. This leads us perfectly into one of the most famous case studies in advertising history, Schlitz beer. Back then, every single beer company was shouting the exact same vague thing. Our beer is pure. It was just meaningless background noise. But Hopkins, he took a totally different approach. Instead of just saying Schlitz was pure, he showed people how, by telling the fascinating story of the brewing process. Now, here's the kicker. Every other brewer was using pretty much the same methods, but Hopkins was the first one to actually talk about them. He used these compelling, specific details that made the claim of purity feel real and tangible and, most importantly, true. It's so true, isn't it? Vague claims are just forgotten instantly, but specific, factual details, they stick in your brain. They create this powerful feeling of honesty and authority. When you give someone a concrete number or a detailed process, it feels like you've done the research, and people are just way more likely to believe what you're saying. Now, I know what you might be thinking. This all happened 100 years ago, so why does any of it still matter today? Well, because these aren't just some old-timey advertising tricks. These are the fundamental building blocks of almost all modern marketing. Just look at the timeline of this idea. It starts with Hopkins back in 23. It gets this massive revival during the whole Mad Men era in the 60s, thanks to guys like Ogilvy. And today, it is the absolute core of data-driven digital marketing. These principles have lasted because, well, they just work. I mean, the parallels to what we do now are just undeniable. Hopkins testing coupons, that was the 1920s version of digital A/B testing. Him tracking mail orders, that's our website conversion tracking. His obsession with specific headlines, that's the entire foundation of SEO. And offering samples, that paved the way for the whole freemium and free trial world we live in. The name's changed, but the science is identical. And that's really the key takeaway from all of this. Yes, we have way more sophisticated tools for testing and tracking now, but the things we're testing, human desire, selfishness, curiosity, the craving for specifics, those things haven't changed one bit. We're just applying his science at a speed and a scale he probably couldn't have even dreamed of. So I'll just leave you with this thought to chew on. As we all obsess over our data dashboards and analytics, are we really coming up with anything new? Or are we all just standing on the shoulders of a giant, using fancy new technology to reprove the timeless scientific principles that Claude Hopkins laid out for us a full century ago?